Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Data Privacy Online class. My name is Marcio Cots. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for GetGlobal International. GetGlobal International is a data privacy consulting company. We have business in the US, in Europe, and Brazil. So it's a pleasure to be here. We're going to wait a little bit. It's going to take like 3 or 4 minutes, so everybody will be able to join us, okay? So in a couple of minutes, we'll start. Okay, everyone, we're going to wait a little bit. So just to be sure that everybody will have the chance to join us. So we'll start in a few minutes. Today, we are going to talk about data privacy nowadays is global. Today is going to be a different data privacy class. We've been getting messages from people in different parts of the world, especially people in countries where they are just about to start this new data privacy era. So we are going to talk about the basic. Today we are going to talk about data privacy, what data privacy is, what the data protection is. We are going to talk about the data privacy professional role in a global scale. As I've said, we've been getting message from people in India, in Doha, Pakistan, South Korea, and Brazil. So that's why we are going to talk about data privacy becoming something global, international. So for those who are already a data privacy professional, today's class might not be so interesting. But for those who are just about to start their career as data privacy professionals, this might be interesting. So, as I've said, today's class is for those who are located in countries where data privacy is something new, and they want to learn the basic. They want to start their career as a data privacy professional. Sanjeev is also mentioning Dubai. That's right. So many countries all around the world are just about to have their own data privacy regulations. And we are getting message from people in different locations who are, just starting their career. So they don't even know what data privacy is. They are not sure how to become a data privacy professional. They are not aware of their responsibilities and not even of the opportunities. So today it's going to be the kind of class for those who want to learn a little bit more about data privacy. And because of that, I'm going to use here a presentation. I have addressed a content for more than 500 Chinese professionals. Most of them were information security professionals, but they wanted to learn more about data privacy. They wanted to learn more the GDPR, the European General Data Protection Regulation. So I have addressed this presentation for Chinese, and I feel that it's pretty much the same kind of content that people who wants to start learning about data privacy, this is the kind of content that people want to get in order to make a decision in switching careers and start investing time, money to become a data privacy professional. So let me share with you my presentation. Let me see. And here it is. Hopefully you guys are able to see me, to hear me, and also see my presentation. So we are going to talk a little bit about what you need to become a DPO, a data privacy professional. We are going to talk about why data privacy is becoming something global. That's why GetGlobal's international slogan is data privacy nowadays is global. GetGlobal International is an American company, but we've been training people all around the world. Just to give you an idea of how international GetGlobal is, our last practitioner course on data privacy, we had students from South Korea, from Pakistan, from India, from Italy, from England, from the US, from Brazil, from Argentina. And that's why data privacy is becoming so global. But definitely people in different parts of the world have a more advanced knowledge of data privacy. People in Europe, for example, have been studying data privacy for quite a while. The GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation in Europe, has been into effect. It's been enforceable. It has been enforceable for the past 2 years, and that's why data privacy professionals in Europe are, let's say, a little bit more advanced on debating data privacy issues. In some other parts of the world, that's something that's just about to start. I'll give you another example. Brazil, the General Data Protection Brazilian law has just came into effect. Nowadays, it's a law that's enforceable, and that's why data privacy professionals in Brazil have been working a lot in the past 2 years, because the Brazilian data protection law gave to the society 2 years to adapt the way they process personal data. And now that the law is enforceable, it's been a great opportunity and for data privacy professionals in Brazil. So that's a different stage. It's a different it's a different phase compared with Europe. That's been a little bit more advanced when it comes to debating data privacy issues. When we compare with Brazil, Brazil is just starting the debate on practical aspects of applying the general protection law. So a lot of things will be discussed. A lot of solutions will have to be implemented to solve different issues that will start popping up everywhere, because that was the same thing that we saw in Europe at the beginning of the GDPR. But in some other locations, either the society, the country is debating data privacy because there are different proposals of a data protection legislation, different bills. For example, India is one of them. They've been debating the Indian data protection law for quite a while. And a lot of professionals, Indian professionals, have already noticed that it might be a great opportunity, but this is something new for everyone in India. So that's why we are just, once we start debating and discussing and addressing things related with data privacy, maybe the best way to start this debate is to have a debating on the first layers of the data privacy matters that we usually debate. The same thing in Doha, the same thing in Pakistan, even in the US, besides California that has its own data privacy legislation, the other states, sometimes you need to even explain to the professionals what that is. So that's why today we are going to talk about data privacy for beginners. Let's put this way. For those who don't know, just a short introduction about myself. As I've said, my name is Marcio Cots. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for GetGlobal International. I'm an international data privacy lawyer with more than 20 years of experience working with the cyber law and more than 100 data privacy management programs implemented in multinationals and big companies all around the world. I'm an European data privacy lawyer, but I have worked in projects in the US, in Canada, in Brazil, in Europe, and in Australia, and in some other locations. Okay, and you might be thinking, if it's the first time that you are hearing something about data privacy, but data privacy, why is data privacy so global? How come a professional like Marcio is an international professional working with data privacy? Isn't that something just that we're going to find in Europe because of the GDPR? No, not really. Different countries all around the world, as I have mentioned, either they already have their data protection legislation, or they are just about to have their own data protection legislation. And even if you don't have your own data protection legislation, if you process personal data of people located in Europe, you should comply with the European GDPR. So sometimes, even if you don't have your own, if the country doesn't have its own data protection legislation, it doesn't mean that you don't have to comply with some other legislation in different parts of the world, especially if you process personal data of people located in those locations, okay? I was talking with one of our last students from South Korea, and that's pretty much what he was facing. He works for a Chinese company in South Korea, but they process personal data of individuals, of data subjects located in Europe. So that's why he wanted to learn more about the GDPR and also how to manage things in the organization in order to comply with a data protection legislation. The same thing is going to happen with Doha. Doha is one of the countries that has just passed its own data protection legislation. One of the attendees, one of the participants of today's online class, Sanjeev, has sent me a message letting me know that Doha has just, I think it was Doha, or am I making some mistake here? Just let me check. Let me see that, because I'm not sure. Dubai, sorry, Dubai. So because of that, we are already looking for some specialists on this new legislation, because we want to bring someone to also talk about this new regulation in Dubai. But besides the legal aspect of data privacy, there is something else that's more international. That's the managing aspect of dealing with data privacy. Because why is that so international? Because legislations, they might have different standards, but the way you are going to deal with data privacy, the way you are going to manage things in the organization, that's more international, because that it doesn't change that much. If you are going to manage a project in California or even in Europe, two different legislation, two different standards. Europe has its own standard. GDPR has set a standard on how to regulate the way you are going to process personal data. California has a different standard. For example, for those who are not aware, and it's the first time that you've been watching a data privacy class, the European standard follows some boundaries compared with some other standards. Is totally different. For example, just to give you an example, the GDPR follows these boundaries. There is a difference between data privacy and data protection. This is the first thing that you have to learn. Data privacy and data protection. Data privacy is the way you are going to use, the way you are going to process the data. It doesn't have anything to do if the data is protected or not. It's more the way you are going to use the data, the way that your organization is going to process the data. Data protection is more about protecting the data. It's more about information security. Of course, you need both things to be compliant with any data privacy regulation. Any of the standards that you might find, even in California, in Europe, in Brazil, in Doha, even what people are debating in India, in Pakistan, data privacy and data protection are complementarily, but they are not the same thing. But they will be required by any legislation, because we want to be sure that you are going to process the data properly and that you are going to protect the data. Under the CCPA or under the GDPR or under the Brazilian LGPD or under the legislation in Dubai, in Doha, we will set some boundaries in the way you are going to use the data, and also it's going to be mandatory that you protect the data. That's interesting, because if we are going to work as data privacy professional, we'll have to deal with the legal aspect of data privacy. We'll have to also protect the data to comply with the legislation. So if we come up with an idea data privacy management program, if I want to become a data privacy professional, I'll have to deal with the legal requirements that will set some boundaries in the way that I'm going to process. I'll also have to be able to respect the individual's right and be able to protect the data. Do I have to be a lawyer to do that? Not really, because actually the way you are going to follow the legal requirements are not, you don't need to be a lawyer to comply with the requirements. It's more about how the way you are going to process the data, the way that you are going to manage things in the organization, that will let us know if you are compliant with the legislation. Of course, as a data privacy professional, you must know the legal requirements. That's a must. There is no way to be a data privacy professional without knowing without having some knowledge of the legal requirements. But the lawyers are not the ones who are going to change things in the organizations, who is going to manage things in the organization, the sources, in order to make the organization compliant with the legal requirements. So we need to know the legal requirements. We are going to work together with data privacy lawyers, but we are the ones who are going to manage the process. We are going to manage people. We are going to implement data privacy software, and we are going to work with the data privacy lawyers in order to draft the policies, the documents that will stipulate what are the procedures to be followed by people, and what are going to be the people's role, and how the data privacy softwares will work in order to help the organization process the data properly and be compliant with the legislation. So for those who are watching this data privacy class for the first time, it might be easier now to understand what we are talking about here when it comes to data privacy. So if you are in India, or if you are in Dubai, or if you are in Doha, even if you are in the US, and it's the first time that you have ever heard anything about data privacy, that's what data privacy is about. Data privacy is about having a regulation that will set some boundaries, some limits in the way that the organizations, profit and non-profit organizations in some parts of the world, in the way they process personal data, in the way they use personal data. And by doing that, we are going to have some legal requirements that will set those boundaries, those limits. And besides the boundaries, the limits, and we have different standards to do that, there will be also the individual's rights. Any individual, they have their own rights when it comes to data privacy. So any data privacy standard all around the world, they have the same kind of knowledge. There will be a data protection legislation that will set limits, and they will also have to comply with individual rights, and we have to protect the data. And the way we do that, we manage things in the organization. That's what a data privacy professional does. They help the organization comply with the legislation. And what are the standards? Marcio, you've been talking about different standards. What standards are those? Actually, nowadays, there are 3 different standards when it comes to data privacy all around the world. There is the European standard that was that you will find in the GDPR, in the General Data Protection Regulation in Europe. There is a standard in the US. It's a different standard that regulates the data privacy in the US. And there is the Chinese standard. That's a standard that you will find in China. And it's the way that China has regulated data protection and data privacy in China. What are the differences between these different standards? The Chinese standard, it's its own standard. Not so much data privacy, more data protection. And it has its own standard. So if you are interested in learning a little bit more about the Chinese standard, just send us an email about it, because we are also thinking about having a Chinese professional to also address a presentation on the Chinese standard. But compared with the other standards, the Chinese standard is more on data protection instead of data privacy. You have already learned that there is a difference between data privacy and data protection. They complement each other, but they are not the same thing. In Europe, data privacy standard is pretty much like this. Let's say that the GDPR stipulates that you only can process personal data if you have one legal ground, one lawful ground. It's also called legal base. Those lawful grounds are 6 different situations, 6 different lawful grounds, legal base or lawful bases that you find in the GDPR. For example, one lawful ground, legal obligation. So if you have to process personal data to comply with a legal obligation, that's one legal ground. That's a lawful base that will let you process the data without needing to get this data subject consent, for example. The consent is one of the six lawful grounds. So sometimes you might need to get the consent to process personal data, or sometimes you have to process personal data to execute a contract. Let's say that we have come into an agreement, and to fulfill your obligation, you have to process my personal data. You don't need my consent for that because you already have a lawful ground, because you have the contractual obligation and you have to execute the contract. You already have one lawful ground called execution of a contract. Legitimate interest is another lawful ground. If you are going to process personal data and you follow into the category of legitimate interest, and you would have to study what legitimate interest is under the GDPR, that would be another lawful ground. So that's the standard. You always need to follow into one of these category to be allowed, to be compliant with the legislation in order to process personal data. If you don't follow into any of these categories, you can't process personal data. Besides that, even by having one lawful ground, it doesn't mean that you can process the data anyhow. It's not up to you to do whatever you want from now on with personal data. So there will be what we call principles, GDPR principles. They are going to set the boundaries, the limits, in the way that you are allowed to process personal data. So those principles will set some limits. For example, the principle of purpose. You cannot process personal data for a second and third purpose if you don't have a second and third lawful ground. This is just one example. And there is also the individual's rights and data protection. This is one standard. This is an European standard. There is the American standard. The American standard doesn't have lawful grounds. You can process personal data. You can even sell personal, and it's not even called personal data. It's personal information. You can sell personal information without having any lawful ground. Why is that? Because the standard is different. In the US, in Europe, it's more about opt-in. What I mean by that, the standard is you need to have a lawful ground to do something, or I opt in, giving you the consent. In California, it's more about opt out. So companies, they can sell your personal data, but you can exercise your right of what in the US they call, in California, they call under the GDPR, the right of do not sell my data. So that's a different standard. They have different individuals' rights. They have different principles, not as many principles or different boundaries, different limits that you would find in the GDPR. So that's what sets the American standard. But at the end of the day, there will be legal requirements, there will be individuals' rights, and there will be data protection. So data privacy is all about being compliant with legal requirements, be able to respect and answer all the requirements and requests, by the individual's rights, and being able to protect the personal information or personal data all around the world. For example, in Brazil, they follow the European standard. The Brazilian General Data Protection Regulation is a GDPR-like regulation. But when you compare the CCPA with the GDPR, they are not quite the same. They are different standards. In India, there might be a fourth standard. It's closer to the GDPR, but I wouldn't say that it's a GDPR-like regulation. It might follow the same standard, but some of the legal requirements might be a little bit different. For example, in Europe and even in Brazil, the government also needs to comply with the data privacy regulation. The Indian data protection bill doesn't include the government into the category of individuals who would have to comply with the legislation. So that changes a little bit the standard, okay? So, and why is data privacy becoming global? The first reason why it's becoming global, because different countries are starting to have their own data protection regulations. But the way you have to deal with data privacy, the way you are going to manage data privacy is pretty much the same way everywhere. As I've said, you have to comply with the legal requirements. You will have to be able to answer all the requests from the individuals, the data subject, and you must be able to protect the data. And how do you do that? You pretty much use the same resources and the same tools all around the world. You need to develop data privacy policies. So corporate data privacy policies, organizational data privacy policies. And what are we going to find in those data privacy policies? The first thing that we need to worry about in every data privacy policies, anywhere all around the world, needs to stipulate the data privacy roles. We need to manage people. And that's why in the data privacy policy, we are going to draft what would be the people's role when it comes to data privacy. Will the organization have a chief privacy officer or a DPO, a data protection officer under the GDPR? Who is the person or the area who that would be responsible for helping the organization comply with the legal requirements and answer the individual's requests and help the organization in having a very strong data protection environment? Will that be one person responsible for that? Will that be a team, an area for that? So we need to describe the data privacy roles. Are we going to have individuals trained in data privacy in different areas of the organization? Are they going to be what we call data privacy stars? They are not the chief privacy officer, they are not the DPO, but they are professionals in different areas of the organization. One professional in human resource, one professional in marketing, and one professional in the legal department, one professional in the operational area of the organization that will be trained in data privacy. They will have data privacy knowledge, and they will help the DPO. They will help the chief privacy officer. They will bring to the data privacy area all the kind of information we need in order to help the organization in comply with the legal requirements, in order to help the organization answer the requests from the individual's rights, and also to help the organization to protect personal information. So we need to set the data privacy roles. Once we have identified what would be the data privacy roles, we need to design and implement the process. To operationalize the policy, we need to let people know what are the procedures they would have to follow, because by following these procedures, the company will comply with the legal requirements, or by following those procedures, the company will be able to get the request from the individuals, from the data subject, and will be able to identify all the information we need to answer any requirement, any request from the data subject, from the individual. Or by following some procedures, we are going to be sure that the data privacy, the personal data, will be protected. So we need to identify all the procedures that process personal data, be sure that those procedures, by following the procedures, we are compliant with the legal obligations, because by doing that, with people playing some roles in order to help people that will follow the procedures, will make the organization comply with the data privacy regulation. So that's why we need not only to have people to monitor what people are doing, but also to maintain all this procedure in place. So that's an ongoing process that will have to be carried out by the data privacy professional. And that's all around the world. And it doesn't matter the data privacy standard. That's pretty much what we'll have to do anywhere. So we need to study the local data privacy regulation to learn all the legal requirements. We need to study the local data privacy legislation to know what are the individual's rights. We need to learn the data privacy regulation to understand what kind of data protection level and standard we need to achieve. But the way we are going to do that is by using the same resource, the same tools, and doing the same things. There might be some differences when it comes to cultural way of dealing with people and cultural ways of processing and doing things in different ways. But at the end of the day, the structure is pretty much the same. So that's the second reason why personal data is becoming so global. And that's why some data privacy professionals are already having an international career on data privacy. Okay? When it comes to the way you are going to manage data privacy, it's all about knowing the legal aspects of data privacy. It's all about knowing how to manage aspects of data privacy. It's all about information security. But there are two other things that I would advise you to develop to become a better data privacy professional. And it doesn't matter where in the whole world you are. Soft skills, because as a data privacy professional, we don't want to be the kind of professional that says no or yes. We want you to be a consultant. We want you to help the organization in order to identify the risks So it's a no, but help the organization in changing procedures, in implementing softwares that would help the organization in identifying, changing, managing things in order to make the organization keep doing the things that the organization needs to do, but compliant with the legislation. So you are going to interact, you are going to work with different areas in the organization. So that's why it would be a plus to develop your soft skills. Besides that, knowing your company's business is also a plus. If you are working as a data privacy professional, it would be a plus if you had a great knowledge, a deep knowledge of your organization's business. Because by knowing how they do things, you would be able to identify data privacy risks and be able to propose some changes in order to mitigate the risks and let the company keep doing business without any legal liability. Okay? So that's pretty much what I would like to address today. So once again, for those who are located in different parts of the world, and it might be the first time that you are hearing something about data privacy, that's pretty much what data privacy is. So if you got interested in this kind of content and you want to dive a little bit deeper into data privacy, I would recommend you to subscribe our YouTube channel and also make part of our Telegram group. You are going to find the link in the description of our YouTube videos. So don't waste time. And the following classes will be about either basic things about data privacy, data protection, and for those who are a little bit more advanced on data privacy, we'll come up with some more advanced content also for you guys. Okay, so that's it for today. It was a pleasure being here with you, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.